I met Alex in college. Both of us were studying media, both fiercely independent, and somehow drawn to each other like magnets. We weren't a picture-perfect couple, but we had that easy rhythm people envy. Inside jokes, shared playlists, late-night ramen runs. We moved in together 2 years after graduation, rented a small apartment on the edge of the city. Life felt settled, comfortable. I trusted Alex with everything, not in a blind way, but in the way you do when someone's been through your worst days and still chooses you. We both worked demanding jobs. Alex in marketing, me in editorial, but we carved out time. Friday movie nights, Sunday morning walks. Small rituals that stitched our lives together. At least that's what I thought. Over the past few months, something began to shift. Not drastically. Not with yelling or doors slamming. Just small things. Alex started getting more private with their phone. Messages would pop up and the screen would be swiped away quickly. Calls would come at odd hours, and suddenly, Alex would need to step outside for better signal. Still, I chalked it up to work stress. We were both grinding hard, and I figured emotional distance came with the territory. I didn't want to be paranoid. I wasn't that kind of person. Jealous, snooping, obsessive. We'd always promised each other space and respect. So I let it go. Told myself I was overthinking. That's when Jordan started popping up. Not all at once, just here and there in stories Alex told. Jordan said that client's a nightmare. Or Jordan cracked the pitch idea. A new colleague recently transferred, smart and confident by the way Alex talked. I didn't pay much attention. I'd never been the possessive type. Besides, the way Alex mentioned Jordan felt casual enough. Too casual even. But then Jordan came up more often. Dinners that ran late. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. Once, Alex showed me a meme Jordan had sent. Something only the two of them would find funny. It felt harmless, but I remember that weird sting in my chest. Like I'd been nudged out of a space I didn't even know I was supposed to protect. One Thursday night, Alex canceled our dinner plans last minute. Said something about a team meeting running late. I shrugged it off. We'd been busy. I ordered takeout and watched a movie alone. Around 11 p.m. I heard the apartment door open. Alex walked in, didn't notice I was still up. They looked surprised, maybe even guilty, but masked it quickly. I asked how the meeting went. Fine, Alex said too fast. Long, then headed straight to the shower. Something about the way they avoided my eyes, the faint perfume that didn't smell like ours. It lingered longer than it should have. I stared at the untouched second plate on the table. My gut twisted for the first time. A silent warning I didn't know how to answer. Still, I didn't say anything. Maybe I was afraid to know. Maybe I didn't want to admit that something sacred was starting to crack in ways I couldn't name yet. It started with a missed call. Alex had left their phone on the kitchen counter while taking a shower. I wasn't trying to snoop, but when it buzzed and I glanced at the screen, I saw Jordan's name. The preview read, "Last night was." And then it cut off. My throat tightened. Picked up the phone. I shouldn't have, but I did. The full message read, "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about it." That sentence hit like a blow to the chest. There was no work meeting. There was no late client. Just this, whatever this was. I stood there frozen, staring at the words, waiting for something to make it okay. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was out of context. But it wasn't. The chat thread was filled with messages, some flirty, some explicit, all confirming a relationship that had been forming in the shadows while I looked the other way. I didn't need to scroll too far. A picture of them together in a car. Alex smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. It was all right there. Casual, consistent, and completely hidden from me. When Alex walked into the kitchen minutes later, towel over their shoulder, I didn't confront them right away. Put the phone back. My heart was pounding so hard I couldn't think straight. I was angry, but more than that, I was gutted. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a dismantling of everything I'd believed in. Trust wasn't something we ever had to work for. It had always been the default. And now it was gone just like that. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Alex, eyes wide open, replaying every moment I had ignored. The late nights, the distant kisses, the polite deflections. I remembered asking once if everything was okay, and Alex saying, "Yeah, just tired." I had believed them. 'Cause love is stupid like that. It makes you protect the person even when they're the one hurting you. The next day, I waited until we were both off work. I sat Alex down and told them what I saw. No yelling, no accusations. Just quiet, cold facts. Alex didn't deny it. They didn't even pretend to be shocked. Just a long silence followed by a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen." That made me laugh in a way that didn't feel like me. How do you not mean something that happens again and again? Asked why. The answer was vague. Loneliness, emotional disconnect, confusion. The usual list. But none of it changed the truth. They had made a choice. Repeatedly. Deliberately. And they had let me keep loving them while they did it. That's what cut the deepest. By the time the conversation ended, I didn't feel angry anymore. Just empty. Like someone had erased the last few years and left a hollow outline in their place. I told Alex I needed space. They nodded. There were no promises, no desperate apologies. Just the sound of something breaking, quietly but completely. I didn't move out right away. We shared a lease, shared bills, shared routines. But after that conversation, everything changed. We became quiet strangers in the same space. There were no more shared meals, no more passing touches. Just silence and distance. I kept to myself, doing what I had to: eat, work, sleep. But emotionally I was somewhere else. Detached, cold, watching my own life from the outside. Every minute around Alex felt like a performance I hadn't signed up for. I spent a lot of time thinking not about Alex and Jordan anymore but about myself. About how I'd let things slide, how I'd ignored instincts, how I'd confused comfort with connection. I wasn't blaming myself for being cheated on, but I was starting to realize how blurry my own boundaries had become. I had assumed transparency, never asked for it. I thought respect meant not asking questions, when maybe it meant asking the right ones at the right time. I thought about the early days with Alex. How we promised space, trust, and autonomy. But space had turned into secrecy. Trust had turned into blind faith. Autonomy had turned into emotional avoidance. And the worst part, I had mistaken all of that for maturity. I had prided myself on being the chill partner, the one who never hovered, never demanded. But now I saw how that openness had left gaps wide enough for someone else to walk through unnoticed. It wasn't about controlling someone. It was about protecting the relationship. And I hadn't. I had trusted without verifying. Loved without checking if that love was being returned the same way. I started journaling just to make sense of everything. How I felt, what I missed, what I didn't. Some pages were angry, some pathetic, some just questions I had no answers to. But it helped. Seeing it written out made things feel more real. Less like a bad dream I was waiting to wake up from. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want an apology anymore. I just wanted clarity. And slowly that's what I found. I realized I didn't need closure from Alex. I needed closure from myself. For ignoring red flags, for dismissing discomfort, for loving someone harder than I loved my own peace. It was humbling to see how much I had tolerated in the name of patience and understanding. Eventually I started setting new boundaries. Not for Alex, but for anyone who'd come after. Emotional honesty, communication check-ins, mutual transparency. I stopped romanticizing privacy as something sacred when it becomes a shield for dishonesty. There's a difference between keeping parts of yourself private and keeping secrets that affect someone else's reality. I understood that now. I told Alex I was moving out. There was no fight, no reaction, just a nod. I didn't feel triumphant. Felt tired. But under the exhaustion there was something like clarity. Not peace yet, but direction. I didn't have to carry this version of myself forward. I could leave the part that accepted crumbs and call it love behind. And that felt like the first real choice I'd made in months. 6 months passed before I truly felt like I could breathe again. Not all at once, not with some dramatic breakthrough. Just small shifts. I changed apartments. Threw away things that reminded me of the past. bought furniture I actually liked, cooked meals for one and didn't feel sad about it. I went back to old hobbies I'd abandoned. Reading, sketching, long walks with no destination. I started living on my own terms again. There were moments of loneliness, yes, but they were honest. Not the kind that creeps in while lying next to someone who's already left you emotionally. People asked about Alex. Kept it short. We're not together anymore. Most didn't pry. The ones who knew me well didn't need to. They saw the shift in my energy. I wasn't carrying bitterness. I'd left that behind too. The anger had burned out. What remained was a kind of detachment that only comes when you finally stop needing answers. One afternoon, I ran into a mutual friend who casually mentioned that Alex and Jordan had broken up. It was framed lightly like gossip, but I didn't feel anything. No satisfaction, no sadness. Just a mental note and then nothing. I realized in that moment that I wasn't healing anymore. I was healed. The part of me that once ached had finally stopped bleeding. It wasn't numbness. It was peace. And it was real. What surprised me most was how much I learned from something that had shattered me. I had entered that relationship thinking love was enough. That loyalty guaranteed loyalty. That giving someone space meant they'd respect it. But love without boundaries is just vulnerability waiting to be misused. I now understood that privacy should never mean hiding. And trust doesn't mean avoiding hard conversations. It means honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. I also learned not to ignore silence. Emotional withdrawal is rarely random. When someone pulls away, it matters. It's not always your fault, but it's always a signal. And I promised myself I'd never ignore those signals again. I'd ask the hard questions. I'd speak up instead of swallowing doubt. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I know what it costs to stay quiet. There was no grand moment of forgiveness. No dramatic closure. Just the steady choice every day to move forward. To let go. To rebuild. And somewhere in that process, I stopped being the version of myself who tolerated emotional starvation. I became someone who demanded presence, respect, and honesty. Not through ultimatums, but through quiet standards I would no longer bend for anyone. Looking back, I don't regret loving Alex. I regret not loving myself enough while I did. That's what this story really gave me. A mirror. It showed me where my boundaries were, where they needed to be. And maybe that's the only good thing about heartbreak. It clarifies who you are when everything else falls apart. And now I know exactly who I am.